10:30, and so we're calling to order this meeting of the Virginia State Air Pollution Control Board. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, you have an agenda before you. Is there a motion to approve? A motion, is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Without objection, the agenda is approved. We have some minutes that have been corrected. A lost 3 was taken out of them, so I'd be looking for a motion to approve the minutes as corrected.
I move that we approve the minutes as corrected.
Thank you.
I second Lornell Tompkins.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. All right. You're up. I don't want to make you nervous or anything, but you're the thing that takes up the most time.
But you'll enjoy every moment.
I will.
Yes. I'm Karen Sebastiansky. I work in the Office of Air Data Analysis and Planning, and your first regulation today covers National Ambient Air Quality Standards for very fine particulate matter, and this is Regulation Revision 824. And the Federal Clean Air Act, Section 109, requires the EPA establish national ambient air quality standards for criteria pollutants, including several varieties of particulate matter or soot. They are required to issue a primary standard to protect the public health and a secondary standard that protects public welfare. They are supposed to update the NAAQS every 5 years, and they set the NAAQS without regard to cost. EPA implements this part of federal law through 40 Code of Federal Regulations Part 50, and the new National Ambient Air Quality Standard for this year is for PM 2.5, or very fine particulate matter. And how fine is very fine? If you look at a human hair, PM 10, which is 10 microns in diameter, is that much smaller than a human hair, and PM 2.5 microns is even smaller than the PM 10 in the human hair. Very, very fine. Where does it come from and how do we control it? Well, there's what you would expect from sources of combustion whenever you burn something, motor vehicles, farm equipment stirring up dust. But there is also a form of secondary particulate that, similar to ozone, forms when ammonia, nitrogen oxides, and sulfur dioxide interact with sunlight and the climate, and basically condenses into another form of particulate. So it's not just what comes out of a smokestack or a tailpipe, it's also part of a chemical process. The new standard was issued by EPA through the Federal Register on March 6th of this year. It became effective May 6th. The primary annual concentration has been set at 9.0 micrograms per cubic meter, and this is lower than the previous standard of 12.0. There were no changes to the 24-hour concentration. That remains at 35 micrograms per cubic meter. And there were also no changes to the secondary standard, which remains at 15.0. In Virginia, if you look at that top dashed line, that was the previous standard. The second dashed line is the new one. The trends are going down, but you will see as the notes on the side say we had a couple of upticks due to near road monitors coming online and due to some fires. EPA is also still in the process of adjusting the emissions inventory and the data. So these lines might change a little bit, but not by a lot. So as you can see, we are attaining the new standard of 9.0. Compared to the rest of the country, we're in good shape. It looks like most of the action with PM is out on the West Coast. And what we're doing today is adopting the new National Ambient Air Quality Standard for fine particulate matter. This will enable us to meet our federal regulatory, permitting, and planning requirements. This regulation is exempt from the standard adoption process by 2.2-4006A4C of the Administrative Process Act because we needed to conform to federal requirements. And before I make my recommendation, are there any questions?
there any questions from the board?
Yes. Karen, thank you. Karen, I noticed in your slide you mentioned that for Virginia, we're attainment under this new standard.
Yes.
Could you be more specific? What's the potential impact regarding Northern Virginia?
Well, Northern Virginia is not an attainment for ozone, and when you're not an attainment area, there are additional requirements. We have more planning requirements. We have to submit a state plan. Facilities with permits may need to get more strict permit limits installed. We would have to start looking at other controls that we would need to impose to bring us down to attainment.
Okay, can we have your recommendation?
Okay. The department recommends that the board adopt the proposal with an effective date consistent with the Administrative Process Act. In adopting this proposal, the board affirms that it will receive, consider, and respond to petitions by any person at any time with respect to reconsideration or revision as provided in Section 2.2-4006B of the Administrative Process Act.
So this is effectively a non-discretionary action that we have to take to remain in compliance with federal law.
Yes, sir.
Let's get a motion on the table, then we can discuss it if we want to. Is there a motion to approve? So moved. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Karen, you're halfway there.
Okay, thank you. Next up, another final exempt regulation for the inspection and maintenance program fees under Chapter 91, and this is revision MS. And the inspections and maintenance program in Northern Virginia, which is Arlington, Fairfax, Loudoun, Prince William, and Stafford, and the cities of Alexandria, Fairfax, Falls Church, Manassas, and Manassas Park, are required by both Federal Clean Air Act and by state law. And the I&M program requires motor vehicle inspections in the ozone non-attainment area, which also corresponds to the ozone transport region. In the 2012 Acts of Assembly, they established chapters 216 and 824 to authorize DEQ to designate a program coordinator to implement the inspection programs. And part of the reason for that is back in the early days of the program, it cost $14,000 to $15,000 up front just by the equipment. Then the operators had to spend between $4,000 and $6,000 every year to maintain the equipment. And the General Assembly just recognized that a program coordinator system is just more cost effective. DEQ determines what services are provided and the amount to be paid, and we implement through our I&M regulation under Section 665. And in Virginia, our program coordinator is Opus Inspections. It's a multinational corporation. Opus Inspections does nothing but provide I&M services throughout the country. And there are currently 527 stations providing I&M services in Northern Virginia. This year, 2024, House Bill 13 raised Opus's fee from $3,500 to $5,000 per station per year. They can start collecting this fee starting July 1st. It also raises the inspection fee from $28 to $30. That should be $30, not $32. That's not in the regulation, but that was part of the code change. And these are the first program increases since 2012. It's basically the first time Opus has had a raise in, over 10 years. Today, we're amending 9 VAC 5-91-665 to include the new program coordinator fee as required by the 2024 Acts of Assembly. This adoption process is exempt from the state administrative procedures through the Administrative Process Act because this particular amendment is needed to conform to Virginia statutory law. And are there any questions before I make my recommendation?
Are there any questions for Karen before we hear staff's recommendation?
I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Russ.
Karen, what's the potential impact on those 525 stations with this increase in the fee?
Well, there's a real mixture of different types of stations. There are big car dealerships. There are small mom and pop stations that do this for extra money. There are some municipalities that have fleets of vehicles and they conduct their own inspections. Participation in this program is voluntary. So if it's not worth your while financially, you can just stop doing it if you wish to do so. Based on my discussions with the I&M folks who run the program out of Woodbridge, they're not expecting any big impacts.
Any more questions for Karen? Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I do.
Why is this not throughout Virginia? Is it the cost?
It's mandated by state law. It's specifically for ozone non-attainment areas. So theoretically, if we put I&M stations throughout the state, there would be the expense with no impact on air quality.
Karen, thank you, Mr. Chair. Karen, how do you monitor or, make sure that these are being done? What's the process, since it is voluntary?
The inspections? Yeah, that's part of the I&M program in Woodbridge. They actually have people go out and make sure that things are being run correctly. That's, again, OPUS is responsible for making sure that the equipment is maintained and correctly operated. So it's between DEQ and OPUS.
Could I add one thing, since I live in Northern Virginia? You can't get your car registered unless you have your emissions inspection. So that's how it's really enforced. And then we have sensors on the side of the roads periodically that also check on you, and and if you have a problem, it takes a picture of your license plate. So there's a lot of follow-up.
Sure. Dr. Tompkins, and then Mr. Hutchins.
What conditions are required in order to have the requirement of the inspection? I came here from Maryland, and Maryland, the entire state, you have to have your cars inspected for emissions. So looking at the growth, particularly in the Richmond metropolitan area, what determines when we meet the level of looking at the harmful effects of the emissions?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's where the state implementation plan and the planning process comes in. We look at the emissions inventory. Richmond, for example, is attaining the ozone standard. Actually, 20 plus years ago, Richmond was non-attainment for ozone, but it was able to get into attainment using other emissions controls, controls on facilities, more stringent permits, and a suite of other things. And it's going to be on a case-by-case basis, on a region-by-region basis. Northern Virginia, you've got motor vehicles. Richmond still has, an industrial sector, and so that menu of choices for emissions controls was going to be different. So Richmond is currently maintaining the ozone NAAQS. If we were in danger of going beyond the ozone NAAQS, then that would be something that the legislature might want to consider as a way of getting us back into compliance with ozone.
Mr. Hutchins?
Ma'am, out of curiosity, you live in Fairfax and you got to do inspections. Do you have a vacation home on the lake down in Southern Virginia? What prevents you from getting your car inspected down there versus go back to Fairfax when your vacation's over?
Well, I suppose it's going to depend on where you're registered. I suppose you could register your vehicle wherever you wish.
Let's let Mike Dowd talk about it. I've gotten lots of complaints on this one.
Registration certainly has something to do with it. It's actually a little bit more complicated than that. If they catch you, it's very similar to where you pay your property tax. It's where you garage your car as a principal location. And there have been, and Mr. Rollbank knows this well, is that there are often cars right on the cusp who who will garage them for purposes in an attainment area for purposes of avoiding I&M, but they drive their car constantly into Northern Virginia. The car spends most of its time in Northern Virginia, and yes, those cars are subject to I&M.
Yeah. So there's roadside sensors that
Yeah.
catch these people, and then they call me because my phone number's on there. And so if there's it's in the code so many times per certain calendar period, if they've been driving through Northern Virginia, then it's considered that they were supposed to comply with those rules. We actually test, 4,000 cars a week, I think, something like that. And we only get about 40 complaints a month, which is not that bad. But this program does catch people periodically that are like living in Fauquier County. One of them drives by my house, actually in Prince William County, to get to Fairfax County to go to work. And there was a roadside sensor at Fort Belvoir that caught him. So.
And I'm sorry. I was just going to add to Dr. Tompkins' question before, coming from Maryland into Virginia. You'll notice there are different programs. It's central up in Maryland. Here we have, service stations perform the inspections. But also on another thing, in the Northeast, the entire Northeast basically is required to do I&M because it's required in the Clean Air Act. They're in the ozone transport region, the OTR. So all of Maryland, all of Pennsylvania, all of New Jersey, New York require I&M. Virginia, just the little bit of Northern Virginia is in the ozone transport region. So even if we get into attainment up there, we will still be doing I&M up there because you really can't back out of it unless you make a heck of a showing to EPA, and I don't think that's going to be likely for some time. So. But it has been an issue in the past when we had other non-attainment areas. It is I&M is a very controversial program. They've tried to do it they did do it in Richmond many years ago, and they were thinking in Roanoke many years ago as well, and it's a very difficult program to get established, to get public support for.
Thank you. Yes.
Hey, Karen, could you speak to us about Norfolk and Hampton Roads? I'm curious as to why they're not included.
Because they're attaining the ozone standard. The air is clean.
Any other questions? We ready to hear the recommendation of staff? Go ahead.
Yes, we're including the new program coordinator fee. And the department's recommendation is that the board adopt the proposal with an effective date in accordance with the Administrative Process Act. In adopting this proposal, the board should affirm that it will receive, consider, and respond to petitions by any person at any time with respect to reconsideration or revision as provided in Section 2.2-4006B of the Administrative Process Act.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. The recommendation is approved. Thank you very much, Karen.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr.
Good
Chairman.
morning, Mike.
Mike Dowd, I'm Director of the Urban Renewable Energy Division, and I am here to report to the board regarding controversial permits. And my report this morning is that I have nothing to report. There have been no further developments in either of the two controversial permits that have been presented to the board before, either the Chesterfield Energy Reliability Center or the SEPSA, Southeastern Public Service Authority Regional Landfill. With respect to the regional landfill, that permit process is sort of tied together with an overall expansion of the landfill, and that there just hasn't been much. It has been going slowly. And with respect to the Dominion project at the Chesterfield site, there just hasn't been any developments for us to report on that. So.
Okay, well, it was a very articulate report of nothing.
One of my more difficult
Thank
presentations, Mr. Chairman. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Dowd? Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
So, Mike, so am I to assume on both cases essentially the ball is in the applicant's, sort of their side,
That's correct.
and nothing is being held up on the air board, from your department's side?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks for the clarity.
If there's nothing else, thank you, Mike. Before we move into the public forum, there's some recognitions I'd like to do. First, Dr. Tompkins and Hope Cupid have terms which, by their terms, expire on the 30th of this month. Each of them has given stellar service, very attentive, with a great deal of integrity, and we appreciate your service to the Commonwealth, and thank you for all that you've done.
Max. Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
You may.
I thank you for that recognition. Has a replacement been named for me, for Hope Cupid?
I don't think a replacement has been named. I anticipate that one will, but you're correct that your term lasts until your replacement is named.
Right. I just wanted to recognize that, so if a replacement is made from here on, when will I be notified? So that I will not have to come back to another meeting after June.
Rachel, will we let them know when their replacements have been appointed?
I'm going to defer to Brandon. I'm not entirely sure what that process is.
Mr. Chairman, Brandon Bull, Director of Policy at the Department of Environmental Quality. As many of you may know, DEQ does not play a role in selecting appointments. Those are made by the governor and the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office. We don't have a role in that, so notifications about any appointments would be coming from that office. We don't know when it will be or might be or what will happen.
Thank you. Let's put it this way, Hope. If we do need you to come back to a meeting, we'll contact you and tell you. But otherwise, I think it would be safe to assume that you're going to have a replacement.
Before the next meeting?
Yes.
And that's fine. I just would really like that this opportunity to speak or say something to the board, if I may.
I'll give you 3 minutes like everybody else.
I figured that. So just to state, as Mr. James said, I have served on this air board for a while, and I did anticipate that I was going to be leaving today. However, I don't have a replacement. But in lieu of that, I do want to make a statement. I want to say that as I stand before you today, I am filled with immense gratitude and a deep sense of responsibility. It has been a true honor to serve on the Air Board of Virginia, and I am proud of the strides that we all have made in advocating for cleaner air and a healthier environment for all of our residents. However, as my term comes to an end, I must express a profound concern that I hope will all resonate with each of you. Environmental justice is not merely a catchphrase. It is a fundamental principle that we guide us in ensuring that every community, especially those historically marginalized, has a voice in decisions that affect their health and well-being. Throughout my tenure, I have witnessed firsthand the disparities that exist in our communities. Black and brown neighborhoods, low-income families, and other vulnerable populations often bear the brunt of pollution and environmental degradation. These communities are not statistics. They are our neighbors, our friends, our families. They deserve to be heard and protected. The presence of an environmental justice advocate on this board has been crucial in bringing these issues to the forefront. My role has been to amplify the voices of those who are often ignored, to ensure that their concerns are not just acknowledged but acted upon. It is essential that this work continue beyond my tenure. An environmental justice representative on the board serves as a beacon of hope and accountability. This role ensures that we do not revert to a one-size-fits-all approach, but instead tailor our strategies to address the unique challenges faced by most of our impacted communities. Let us continue to build a Virginia where everyone can breathe freely and live healthily. Thank you all for the opportunities to serve. I am confident that your support, we can keep the spirit of environmental justice alive and thriving on this air board. Thank you. 3 minutes.
Thank you, Hope. Dr. Tompkins, you have anything you want to? Great. The other acknowledgement I want to make is there's a young lawyer with us named Benny Winkleman. He is an intern in the Office of the Attorney General, and he is a proud attendee of the University of Wisconsin School of Law, but a Richmond native, and we're delighted to have him here with us. All right, how many public speakers do we have?
We have Mr. Glenn Besa.
Mr. Besa, nice to see you. I appreciate your fidelity to this board, regardless of the paucity of our agenda.
Well, I think we'll all be glad that it'll be over quick. Again, my name is Glenn Besa. I live in Chesterfield County. I've got 2 matters I want to bring before you. I know we're not supposed to address issues, I guess, regarding the Chesterfield County gas plant, but I did want to say that the county seems to have a fundamental misunderstanding as to what the site suitability requirements are, because the staff there have been informing the supervisors that they need to do modeling to determine site suitability, which is not the case. And I would hope that the state DEQ might better inform or help inform the staff of the county that modeling is your job. Site suitability with regard to issues like environmental justice is theirs, because there seems to be considerable confusion on their part. The other matter I want to...
If I may, I don't know, don't speak for DEQ, but as for this board, it's not our role to instruct the counties. So I hear what you're saying. The people you're talking to here, we can't do what you're asking for.
Okay. Well, you adopt policy, and I think the policies with respect to the site suitability issue are one that may require some attention, because there seems to be confusion on the part of at least one jurisdiction with regard to what that means. Okay. The other matter I want to bring to your attention is one of a broad issue that affects the board and this administration, the governor, and that is that every day that you look in the paper, there's another article on the issue of climate change. And I want to just share with you today the article that is in the paper today, the Richmond Times-Dispatch, related, and it's an Associated Press article. An Associated Press analysis of federal data shows that about 2,300 people in the United States died last summer, with their death certificates mentioning the effects of excessive heat. And the climate scientists that were commenting, the health professionals that were commenting, said the number is actually far greater than that. Okay. The fact that we rolled back the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, the fact that this is an administration that continues to pursue rollback of policies like the Clean Economy Act is of grave concern to me, and I believe grave concern to the majority of citizens of Virginia who are concerned about climate change, know that it's real, and are very concerned that we have an administration that's taken backward steps in addressing a very serious issue. With that, I'll conclude my comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Besa. As always, your comments are well-informed and obviously in earnest. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Is that all, Rachel?
I'm not aware of any other speakers.
Okay. In that case, unless anyone on the board has anything, we are adjourned. .29 minutes. I did.